A big thank you to Commissioner Ciolos for travelling over. Thank you for contending with the travel arrangements and flying in to Birmingham today. You've been Commissioner for Agriculture since June 2010. We've seen you over in the United Kingdom a lot. I know you've been to Scotland, to Wales, to different meetings, and certainly at Oxford last year you came over and saw and visited some farms with us. You have a strong background in agriculture, training both in Romania and in France. So we really look forward to hearing what you're going to say. Commissioner Ciolos.
Dear President Kendall, Secretary of State Spellman, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for inviting me to NFU's annual conference and for this excellent opportunity to explain to you firsthand what is on the table and why when we look at the future of the Common Agricultural Policy. I will structure my intervention only on a few issues I know are particularly important to you, and afterwards I will be ready to take your question. We are at the turning point in CAP history. European farms and agri-food business are under pressure. On the one hand, they are facing international competition. On the other hand, they operate within the constraint of the choice our society in the European Union makes in terms of how we farm, how we care about environment, about animal welfare, about our traditions. At the same time, the European Union is a major player for global food production, and it has the ambition to stay so in the long term. And this is a strategic choice for us and for our common agricultural policy. The agri-food industry in Europe can provide a major boost for jobs and growth, especially during this period of economic downturn and budgetary austerity. The EU is the biggest exporter of agri-food products in the world, with more than 100 billion euros, so nearly 85 billion pounds in 2011. To continue this successful track record, our farmers need support, need stability, need a coherent toolbox to fight economic turmoil and price volatility. This is why I believe in a strong common agricultural policy backed by a strong budget. This is why I believe that maintaining direct payments across European farming sector is a strategic choice we must make as well. The overall budget by the Commission from the 2014 to 2020 is basically a freeze at 2013 level. In the current economic climate, I believe that this is a decent approach, but you might be aware that there is a strong political pressure to reduce the common agricultural policy budget. And for me, I think it's important to be able to maintain this public contribution to the challenge that we have to face in agricultural policy in the future. With this reform, we remain committed to a market-oriented agriculture, building on the progress made in the past 20 years. Decoupling of subsidies remain at the core of our policy. Production decisions have to be driven by markets and not by subsidies. There will, of course, still be investment grants available under rural development. We are strengthening our farm advisory services to help farmers respond to new challenges, such as adapting to climate change. We will have a rural development policy which will address the challenge of innovation more than ever before, as well as continuing investment and structural change. For young farmers, there will be a higher direct payment for new entrants, as well as startup grants. We will have an improved organization of the market, but also a more rapid response mechanism and measures to boost producer organizations. And these are key elements to ensure the competitiveness of agriculture in the long term. And you, Peter Kendall, and Caroline also mentioned the fact that we are not we don't have enough instruments to deal with competitiveness in the future common agricultural policy. I think we have this kind of instruments in the first pillar and also in the second pillar, and also in the cooperation that we made with research and innovation policy, but I will return on this issue. The CAP post-2013 will have to find the right balance between these strategic goals: economic sustainability, environmental sustainability, and social acceptability. And this third objective is also very important. If we want CAP to be a forward-looking policy, we can no longer justify direct payments based on historical reference that go back to 10 years ago. This is why we are looking to move toward a flat rate payment per hectare in each region or member state. Farmers in England will benefit from the fact that they have already moved to a flat rate payment per hectare. On the other hand, I know that is not the case for Wales, and I'm aware of your concerns. We want to avoid any disruptive effects that could impact the viability of farms during the conversion from a historical to a regional model of flat rate payment. The new Common Agricultural Policy will continue to support farmers' income, but this support will be better tailored to objective needs. This is also why we are introducing tighter rules on capping and active farmers. For years, the Common Agricultural Policy has been criticized for giving disproportionate subsidies from public money to economic operations that may not really need it. The economic crisis, with taxpayers shouldering heavy burdens throughout Europe, is making this argument even more sensitive. And this criticism is even more acute today. It is publicly impossible to defend why the European Union is giving large amounts of money, public subsidies, decoupled, meaning unconditional, for activities with no link whatsoever with farming. Moreover, if we justify direct payments as support to farmers' income, there should be a limit for it. It is a matter of transparency and accountability. If we want this payment to continue, they have to be socially acceptable. But, of course, this is not a Robin Hood operation. The CAP will not take money from the big farms to give them to the small ones, as I heard in some discussions. Moreover, money results from capping will not be transferred or divided between other member states of the EU, but stay in the same country. So you can still use this money for your purpose, for your objectives. The idea is to limit the large, unconditional payments or to have better targeted payments toward, for example, innovation and other measures, including competitiveness. The CAP reform aims at strengthening the competitiveness and sustainability of agriculture and maintaining its presence in all regions of Europe. We cannot talk about sustainability without taking our responsibility for the protection of environment and management of natural resources. 30% of direct payments received by farmers will be linked to respecting certain agricultural practices beneficial for the climate and environment. We put forward 3 agricultural practices that are both simple and efficient while having a clear and positive environmental impact all across the European Union. Crop diversification has beneficial effect on the quality of the soil, retention of water and organic matter, fighting erosion of soil and reduction of inputs. Maintaining the permanent pasture, it's good also for carbon sequestration, biodiversity, and water management. Maintaining an ecological focus area, which means at least 7% of farmland, excluding permanent grassland, but including field margins, hedge, trees, fallow land, landscape feature, biotope, buffer strips, a forested area. And I wanted to mention this in order to be clear that this is not a set aside that we propose. We don't propose 7% of the land as set aside. It's a measure aiming, first of all, to preserve biodiversity and to better use the existing landscape feature. Allow me to add two more arguments in favor of greening. First, I know many farmers in UK are already meeting some of these requirements. Others are doing even more under agri-environmental measures in the Rural Development Programme or under national environmental schemes. We do not want to do less, and we are not going to disregard your efforts. You can be sure on this. We will find the appropriate ways to recognize efforts made under your agri-environmental schemes, whether they genuinely contribute to greening while not removing the incentive to do more or better in the second pillar. The key point with these agricultural practices, linked with direct payments, is to have a real impact at European level. Of course, with agri-environmental measures, some farmers in Europe, they are ready to do more, and they already did more. But we need this general and genuine approach in all European Union, because I cannot accept this bad image that some agriculture have in a public perception that they are not care about environment, doing in the same time a production of food. This is why we want to have this linkage between some agricultural practices also in the first pillar, because I think we need to preserve this direct payment for future, but we have to ensure a strongest linkage between our objective of our policy and the criteria to distribute this payment.